pause.
Isn't it? We have come to the end of the afternoon of questioning of MT, who is a pseudonym given to a globalized resistance activist, a stop the war activist, who was spied on by the undercover police officer HN118, cover name Simon Wellings. He was subject to this fake bomb vest stunt claim that he was behind something, which was a suggestion that someone made in a pub. I'm joined by Kate Wilson, Police Spies Out of Lives. What do you made of what we heard from MT?
I mean, it's gobsmacking. I mean, MT is another one of these witnesses who discovered very, very late in the day, not only that they were spied on, but that absolutely preposterous allegations were made. And it really came across in his evidence just how kind of gobsmacked he was by what had happened. I mean, like, to summarize the evidence, there's a series of reports spanning about 4 years, which contradict each other internally, in fact, and we saw some of them we saw for the first time in this hearing, but they've been kind of coming out over the past couple of days. So basically, Wellings reports that this young Arab man has this wacky idea to do a kind of street theatre stunt that will probably get him killed, of putting on a fake suicide vest and jumping the barriers and trying to get close to Ariel Sharon and, I don't know, pose for a photograph. I don't know what the actual action was. It sounds extremely stupid. But the point is that, you know, first of all, this was never a really serious action proposal. This was a conversation in the pub that never went beyond being a conversation in the pub. Somebody suggested it as an idea. Everybody there went, no, that's a really terrible idea, talked them out of it. That was the end of it.
Crucially, this was a much older white man who was prone to strange ideas.
Well, not only that, but the person named MT, who we've just heard from, whilst he is Pakistani, he is not and was never a young Arab man. And we heard some really nasty, like, racially profiled reporting, which described what was essentially 5 brown people sitting around a table in a pub having a conversation. But by using those terms of, you know, 4 young Arabs had a huddled conversation around a table, the whole thing was kind of made out to give this impression of, you know, this is something. And somewhere I heard that Wellings had in fact also suggested spying on the local mosque, but was told probably not by his managers. So that, like, the racism in this is really really stark. And I mean, MT made the point that you know, aside from the distress and the shock at what was being reported and the personal details, the potential for this to have actually damaged him in his life and led to miscarriages of justice. I mean, you know, it's quite clear that, you know, he had nothing to do with this plot. And I said plot. This conversation. But the thing is, what also happens with this intelligence, and this is something that we've seen elsewhere, is it starts, okay, so there's a stupid conversation in the pub, which Wellings may have overheard or even, you know, said something as part of, becomes this report. The subject of the report is changed from the white guy with some links to theatre who was proposing this action to the Pakistani guy who's described as an Arab. Then over the years, this anecdote is repeated and it gets bigger. So we see a report a couple of years later which says that this person actually had built this fake vest, and it describes how it was built with cardboard tubes sprayed red, blah, 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 and had then been convinced it was a bad idea and had destroyed it. And then a few years later, you get another report by Wellings, this time talking about the cost benefit of his operation. And in that, he says that he, Wellings, bravely recovered the offending fake suicide vest and destroyed it himself. So that you see the story kind of morphing as it goes along. And really, I was really actually shocked by what he says in this cost benefit report about it, where he says that by doing so, he had potentially saved the life of the activist, but more importantly, saved all those top police officers the hassle and the inquiries of having to deal with the fact that an activist wearing a fake suicide vest had been shot. And then he compares that to the experience of the Metropolitan Police dealing with the murder of Jean-Charles de Menezes. And just the cynicism of it, you know, I mean, apart from the fact it's a bullshit story to start with, but to then say, you know, this is the cost benefit of my operation because I've saved all the top cops this hassle of having to explain to the public yet again why they killed somebody who wasn't actually armed. It was just like, oh my God.
Yeah, no, that whole thing about I didn't manage to get a tweet about that, but I think that's a really key part, the cynicism and the quite foul like kind of use of this particular story. Because I think when we first mentioned this fake bomb vest stunt, people I think probably would think, oh, the opening scene from Four Lions, you know, and it's like kind of a bit funny and it's a bit of a joke. But actually, I mean, what it sets in motion, both in terms internally for the police, because they set up this operation.
Oh, we heard that at the very end. That in fact, you know, it wasn't even hypothetical that this had potentially led to real life consequences for people, because actually Special Branch did set up a specific operation, and I understood that there were a number of Arabs who may or may not have been from the Middle East, who were the subjects of this operation. And a lot of this is centering around alleged, in this case, connections with the International Solidarity Movement and people who were doing human rights observer work in Palestine. And yeah, we're going to be hearing a lot more about that as well. And I
mean, this particular sort of incident, I mean, it is very reminiscent of what we heard from L3 with the deployment of James Thompson and Operation Lime, this plot to buy a gun in the south of France as an entirely ridiculous kind of story that he tried to spin out when he was questioned. It also has sort of echoes of Carlos Saraki's intent to incite people to do a firebombing of the charity shop, but I think a lot of it kind of harks back to Bob Lambert's initial OG setup of getting people to bomb branches of to place incendiary devices into branches of Debenhams. I mean, it's very telling that I mean,
I think there is a difference here, because at no point in this entire story does Wellings ever suggest that anybody actually intended to do a suicide bombing attack. In fact, the people who were likely to be violent and kill somebody have always been the security services in this story. So I think it's actually really interesting that off the back of this, and I think you can't underestimate the how problematic it is that off the back of a stupid conversation in the pub, this kind of, you know, overblown policing operation can develop from that. Yeah, I mean, it's just mind-blowing, really. And I mean, MT appears quite a lot in the reporting. A lot of the afternoon's evidence was basically MT going through reports and just saying that's not true, that's not right, that's not true. You know, he was a student activist who for a brief period of time was on the steering committee of Globalised Resistance. It sounds from the evidence we've heard from all the Globalised Resistance members that all you had to do to be on the steering committee of Globalised Resistance was like show up. It wasn't like some, you know, secret cabal or anything. It was
and I mean, you also get, I mean, it wasn't said overtly, but it felt like that because he was a student delegate to the Stop the War steering committee, that and he was friendly with members of Globalised Resistance's steering committee, they kind of went, oh, come on, do this one as well. I mean, that was the impression you got.
Yeah. But what is significant, I think, is that he was one of a relatively small number of ethnic minority members of that steering committee, and just the fact that he was singled out so much by Simon Wellings. I mean, it was very, very clear from the evidence that he gave that, you know, he was doing student organising and human rights. And I mean, he still does.
I mean, from what he said, you know, the majority of things he did was an extension of his academic work.
Exactly.
You know.
Yeah. You know, but it's not reported that way.
No.
So he's reported as organising a benefit for Edward Said, who was a Palestinian who had died, and he's like, well, we organised as a student body, we organised a series of lectures with visiting academics, but that's not how it's reported by the SDS. And you just see it time and time and time again. But the racial profiling that went on here was just very, very clear and very disturbing, I think.
I mean, it's interesting as well that there was we saw a later report by HN18, Robert Hastings, Rob Harrison, cover name, about his attendance in the 2006 vigil against the Israeli bombing of the Lebanon. And within it repeats once again this false story about him being behind this fake bomb vest stunt. And it was also shown that he's got a registry file in his name. I mean, he didn't. I'm like, I don't want to put it. It was a very articulate and erudite speaker who said that, you know, this experience of finding this out, that, you know, he'd left activism behind over 20 years ago, has like really shattered his view of what a liberal democracy we live in, and perhaps you know, perhaps all of these views he's had about the state and the freedoms that are defended wasn't true. You know, I mean, it felt like, you know, exactly the sort of person that maybe the undercover police had done poorly in kind of in this way.
Yeah, very much so, very much so. And he also made the point, I mean, when he was asked, you know, about whether he expected to be spied on, he said, I thought it was, he said, some people did think we were being spied on. Personally, I thought it was delusional, undeserved, overblown sense of people's self-worth as activists. And he said, you know, we were doing stuff that was absolutely open. Most of the population were opposed to the Iraq War, and that was the main thing that he was doing. I mean,
I have to say that view, the idea like that, you know, being targeted by undercover police being like an overblown sense of your own importance was fairly common. I mean, it's what I thought, to be honest.
I thought.
Yeah.
And it's kind of what I still think as well. I just think that, you know, there were people out there who had an even bigger, more overblown idea of their own self-importance than we did, and that was the undercover police units. I do think that's the problem. And you know, I've said it over and over again around this policing is, you know, I may have had some ridiculous ideas about actions. I may have had some ridiculous ideas about politics. I'd be happy to sit down and discuss it, but I was doing it on my own time. I was not a public servant being paid with taxpayers' money. And the cost benefit document that Wellings produced about, you know, his value, essentially. It was a document about his value to policing and society. And it's utter nonsense. It's just made up. And I don't know. I'm not feeling especially articulate, but
no, I just to kind of come back against that a bit, I guess, is I think part of the reason why this was considered as useful police work is it had a much deeper role, right? This was about shaping society in a way, and the effect of that is a slow process. It's not like some immediate sort of thing, but I mean, it manifests itself very like most overtly, I think, with the blacklisting, which prevents anybody who's had any involvement in any kind of radical politics from ever getting in any sort of position of influence within society. But also, I think it also kind of feeds into the racist narratives that Simon Welling leaned on in order to badjacket MT. It also reinforces those, and it makes them more true as far as the police are concerned. Well, they can go, well, it is the Arabs who do these sort of things. Look at this example of MT doing it. He was an Arab who tried to do this sort of thing. And the build-up of all these bullshit reports has an impact, a very real impact. Yeah. And it's one which they all lead in a direction that the police want to go.
Yeah, and they come from within that culture as well. And I think the fundamental problem with all of this, and it's a fundamental problem that faces any kind of undercover policing, is as long as it is secret and as long as it is always intended to be secret, it is going to go wrong. It is going to go wrong because it ends up in a bubble, in an echo chamber full of people who become deluded by the very work that they're doing. I think. But yeah, I mean, Simon Wellings, we're gonna hear from him on Monday, and honestly, like, we're straying into areas that we can't talk about until Monday. But the man was totally deluded.
Yes, yeah. I mean, he was. I mean, he was also clearly someone who you can't fault him for putting the reports in. I mean, he did 4,000 of them plus. We've only seen an absolute fraction of that, a tiny fraction. By all accounts, the inquiry has had sight of 1,000. There's been less than 100 that have been referred to so far. One wonders what else. I mean, he's only due to be down for 2 days. I feel that's a very short period of time for such a character.
I mean, I think something that is going to come out around Simon Wellings is this issue of the rise of the internet in the early 2000s. And I think a lot of his reports will turn out to have been just pulled straight off the internet, because what is really striking, and having seen some of his reporting, we have redoubled efforts to try and find people who remember him. Nobody does, not even Globalized Resistance, really. I mean, we've heard
Very
from
limited. 3
3 members of Globalized Resistance who are like, well, yeah, he was around. Don't remember him talking very much. Don't really remember what he did. And a lot of core participants who did receive disclosure from Simon Wellings didn't realise it was from Simon Wellings, because they had no idea that they had been anywhere near him, and just assumed that the reporting they were seeing came from spy cops they had actually known, like Mark Kennedy or Marco Jacobs.
And also, I mean, because his code name changed, that even, if you were looking at Groundhog Day, that's Simon Wellings. Oh, this stuff says Ring on it, which was a reference to Ring Wraith, his second of his code names. He had 3.
I only discovered today that he had a third code name. This
Rivet something.
Rivet Bolt or something.
Yeah.
And what also happens around this time is that SDS start filing reports on MPOIU forms. It just all gets really confused, like who's doing what. And you see, I mean, we saw with the Red Herring and Psycho Dream that, I mean, there were reports that are described, well, maybe I can't say that, but they would use the wrong code name in order to, particularly to pass things on to other units, in order to hide the fact that they had so many undercovers in the first place. I mean, it all gets very murky around this point. And
undercover policing and very murky, shocker. As we've heard from 3 witnesses who were spied on by Simon Wellings. All 3 of them were involved with Globalized Resistance, which, let's not forget, was only the very beginning of his deployment. The vast majority of his deployment, he was not infiltrating Globalized Resistance. He was spying on the Dissent Network and numerous other anarchist groups. There has been, I mean, I want to talk about it, there has been a statement put in from people from Dissent about the claims that Simon Wellings makes in his witness statement.
Yeah, I mean, you could kind of title the statement Simon Who. But yeah, we have tried very hard at the very last minute, and I'm very, very, very upset with the inquiry, because Dissent applied to be a core participant and had it turned down. Like middle of last week, we had, I think, 75 documents dumped, and the significance of Simon Wellings spying on Dissent, or certainly the claimed significance of Simon Wellings spying on Dissent, became clear. It also became clear, which no one, I think, had really credited, that he was kicked out of Globalized Resistance in August 2004, but his deployment continued until 2007. So we're talking a good third of his deployment when he was spying on us. Yeah, we managed. It was quite a feat to go around and find people named in the documents and people who might have been in the places to say, look, do you remember this guy? Here's a picture, here's a video, here's everything that we can find. And the overwhelming response was, I'm sorry, I don't recognize him. I don't remember the name. I don't, but you know, what people have said is he may have been around. You know, there were some events where there were a lot of people there, but he certainly wasn't part of the core group. He certainly wasn't somebody we knew. So yeah, I'm interested to hear what he's going to have to say, because like you say, 4,000 reports is a lot. And apparently his reporting actually went up towards the end, not.
I mean, I guess there was just an increase in internet traffic during that time, and the email lists he was on were delivering him with plenty of information which he could just pretend was a report. I mean, we've seen already from lots of previous undercover officers that simply handing a leaflet in to the office would result in a report being made.
Yes.
I mean, and for him, yeah, with the rise, like you say, with the rise of the internet, resubmitting an email, I mean, like bloody hell, you know.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, I just somebody just mentioned, and I think it's worth mentioning again. I did hear you talking about it earlier, that there were a number of documents shown in the public gallery today, which showed that some people who are not part of this inquiry, who are not core participants, who are named in the documents, are seemingly not having their names redacted by the inquiry. And I think this has been an issue all the way through. It's something that seems to be quite arbitrary, whether the inquiry will or will not redact third-party names. But I think going forward, it becomes quite serious, particularly because we're getting to people who probably still have jobs, for whom it might be an issue, and also because I mean the stuff that we were hearing about today around, you know, the protests around Ariel Sharon or the bombing of Lebanon obviously has quite significant present day connotations, and the implications for people who might be named could be more serious than just violations of privacy. I don't understand why. I mean, it seems to me that it must be more work for the inquiry to research people and decide whether or not they're going to redact them, rather than just saying, well, we're going to redact third parties who are not involved in this inquiry unless we've contacted them and asked for their permission. But people out there, be aware, if you were involved in any of this stuff, and it doesn't matter how peripherally, and if you think that, or if the inquiry might think that you have a public profile, they may decide not to redact your name. So you should get in touch with the inquiry and find out.
I mean, I really would recommend doing that. We've had a number of situations in the past where individuals have only discovered that they were mentioned by the inquiry because I tweeted it out. But they have been, you know, their name has been shown in documents on the stream with no real warning. In some cases, the inquiry has claimed that because someone was a volunteer at an anarchist bookshop for a number of years, that made them a public figure. I mean, it's an absolute nonsense. I don't understand why the inquiry is doing it this way. There's been a number of things which have really perplexed me about this whole topic.
Yeah, no, it's very odd, and I imagine there's an element of this job being farmed out to various different people within the inquiry legal team, and people just applying it in very different ways. So it really is quite arbitrary, yeah. Bear it in mind. I mean, it's worth saying that MT, who now has privacy in this inquiry, told us today during his evidence that he basically found out that his name had been mentioned. He was very shocked to discover that his name had been mentioned in one of the documents in tranche 2, as a result of which he got in touch with the inquiry, and through that discovered the completely outlandish allegations that had been made against him.
I mean, it's a good argument for doing a vanity Google, quite frankly.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. So if you have, well, like, as Kate said, if you're in any way connected and you are concerned about your name being published, you haven't been involved in the inquiry at all, please do get in touch with the inquiry, because otherwise there is a danger that will happen. Please like and share these videos. I haven't been asking very often, but it really makes a difference to how widely they're seen. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I think we're done.
Yeah. We'll be back again tomorrow with Patricia Da Silva, the cousin of Jean-Charles de Mendes, who was murdered by Metropolitan Police. It's likely to be a shorter session. I don't know the details of how the family campaign was infiltrated. We know that there were reports submitted by Carlos Araki about the family campaign. I don't know if that's the extent of it or whether it's much further. I haven't had a look at the documents at all.
I mean, it's possible. I mean, Wellings mentions it in his cost-benefit thing. It's possible that there is other reporting from other officers.
Almost certainly, there's going to be other reporting from other officers. So please tune into that if you're able to. I mean, it's one of the great injustices of British policing, of which this inquiry kind of crosses over so many. Please join us if you can. There's a comment from someone from the campaign opposing police surveillance. So if you're an activist, having a public profile means you get named. But if you're an ex-undercover police officer with a public profile, that's a reason not to release your name. Yeah, I mean, it is an enormous double standard. We know that the majority of undercover police officers have managed to maintain anonymity. And in some cases, that is because of their current role, which often is very public-facing, which makes no sense at all. But such is the internal logic of the undercover policing inquiry. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again tomorrow. I'll do a preview video just before the hearing starts at 10 a.m. Bye for now.